with a panel on education, innovation and India's urban transformation. And I have a set of very distinguished panelists who are with me at the moment. The chair of the panel is Dr. Subir Gokarn, who is the Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of India and is in charge of the Monetary Policy Department. We also have Sam Pitroda, who is also the chair of the National Innovation Council. He requires no introduction. A large number of the transformation that we've seen in the innovation space and the technology space over the last 30 years via a whole range of technology missions, and especially his personal contribution in the area of telecom come from his current work. We're extremely glad that we have with us today Professor Richard Levin, who is one of the leading lights of not only the US academic system as Yale's president since 1993, and Renana Jhabvala, who is the chairperson of SEWA-Bharat. So we have a very distinguished panel.
The key to network today is connectivity. In India today, we are a nation of a connected billion. And unless and until we begin to really focus on the benefits of connectivity, I don't think we can quite visualize the cities of the future. Today, internet and high-speed connectivity is going to have far-reaching implications on the way we work, educate ourselves, entertain, socialize, and conduct business. So when I look at network and connectivity, I see transformation possibilities everywhere. Traffic management will be very different with the networks. Tourism would be very different. Security, city services. The basic problem is legacy systems. Take, for example, video conferencing. Lots of people travel all over the city for 15-20-minute meetings. Today it is possible that you can avoid that travel by just getting on video and Skype. Cities of tomorrow will not come from cities of today. Cities of tomorrow will come somewhere out there because it's very difficult to break legacy systems.
Look at the system as a whole in India, and I think there's a real danger that the system as a whole in India could become a constraint on India's economic growth if there isn't fairly substantial transformation and change. India needs not just centers of applied problem solving, such as the Institute for Human Settlement. It actually needs a stronger foundation in fundamental science as well. Fundamental science drives a technologically based economy. One of the ironies is India has some marvelous training programs in advanced technology. Your institutes for IITs are first grade in teaching, but they're really not on the map globally in research. India needs this diverse educational needs. It needs to train. It needs to develop people with basic literacy and computer literacy. It needs to do vocational training at the lower end. It needs to have basic higher education for people that do middle level jobs, middle-level skill jobs, technicians, machine operators, nurses, for example. It needs higher skilled people that will become engineers, that have the IIT type level of training. There is a planned expansion there, but it's still a tiny fraction of your population you're educating at that higher end. And then finally, at the very high end, you need truly outstanding research universities, full-service research universities that really teach students, expose students to state-of-the-art work, that give them the kind of broad exposure to multiple disciplines, that allow for creativity, flexibility, adaptive thinking, the kind of education that's needed for leadership elites today, I think is broad. Why are so many students from around the world, increasingly from leadership elites, coming to the United States rather than Britain? Because we have this sort of notion that undergraduate education needs to expose people to multiple disciplines and let them integrate and specialize later. You need a merit-based system of allocating research funds, like peer review, as opposed to politically directed grant making and block grants given to institutions. Some considerable progress has been made in India on this front. Particularly when Kapil Sibal was in charge of giving away research money, to increase the amount of stuff that goes by peer review considerably, but more is needed. That's the basic science. You also need the capacity to do applied research, the kind of problem-solving research that the Institute for Human Settlements aspires to do. And of course, there's a whole nexus of issues around which I completely agree, actually, with Armar, that the fields that you need to integrate are actually somewhat underdeveloped. Not that economics is underdeveloped, the geography is underdeveloped. They're not well integrated. And the field of applied urban planning and urban thinking is actually not very central in these days in the academia of US or Europe. It's fallen into a sort of second-class status. It actually had a strong cohort of people trained in the 1960s, but that is sort of diminished in the next generation. And there are such important problems that need to be dealt with. I mean, namely, what kind of cities do you want, and how are these going to be cities that are efficient in their use of energy, efficient in not having the huge congestion costs imposed on people that reduce their productivity. You need to learn to plan cities so they have mixed-use neighborhoods that reduce the transport needs. They have to be smart in terms of their energy consumption. Building codes have to be developed that improve low cost, the energy utilization. Transportation has to be efficient and fast. And water resources, particularly in India, have to be conserved and husbanded and allocated well. I think there's tremendous opportunity here to build great institutions in India. The economic opportunities here are basically phenomenal. There's a lot of creativity and innovation in certain sectors of the Indian economy. But if you're going to really handle the tremendous movement into cities, serious investment in education is going to be needed.
I think important, so historical perhaps caution that you provided was the decline of urban planning as a discipline. I mean, are there lessons from that experience for an institution like the IIHS? Is it trying to reinvent a wheel that's sort of permanently broken in some sense? And what does one take from this? The obsolescence of what might have emerged as a sort of integrated discipline?
I actually think the demographic, the urban planning grew up in the 60s in the United States because it became popular partly because of social divisions in the cities. It was perceived that was a big problem the United States had to solve. It did attract idealistic, economists, political scientists, engineers who wanted to work across disciplinary boundaries to solve these problems. I think it's not that the problems of cities were all solved, but I think the salience just was displaced, with other issues that arose. I mean, people with a cross-disciplinary interest tended to work more in environmental area or looking at other kinds of problems. So I'm not quite sure how partly I think it's also cities stopped growing in the United States and in Western Europe, and indeed many of them started shrinking. The demographics are so different than they were in India that it was in a way less pressing. I think it could be I think the whole impetus could be restarted by bringing the right people together.
So probably has something to do with compensation, incentives, job opportunities, and so on, which is, I think, the sort of risk factor here is if you're trying to sort of force a new skill set into an existing system, that creates its own frictions also.
I was reading somewhere that what India is experiencing is 5-speed growth. So the top 2 speeds have really, gone really fast, and the other 3 speeds are slower and slower and slower. in the urban areas, 80% of people or 80% of workers are in what is called the informal economy. That is, they are either small, self-employed, or they work as contract workers, or don't have a formal contract. So it's not a small number. People who are living in the what is called slums, actually there's no real definition of, there are many definitions of slums, and it can vary. Bombay, today we were in a meeting and some people thought 60% of people lived in slums, and some other people said no, it was 50% of people lived in slums. So it's a large percentage. The other thing that is quite worrying in the cities is that there's a decline of poverty, and Dr. Om Mathur is here, so I'm quoting his figures, which is that the rate of decline of urban poverty is slower than the rate of decline of rural poverty. The numbers of poor have declined by 15% in the rural areas and have gone up by 34% in the urban areas. So, we are looking at a large base of poor people in the urban areas, and that is those lower speeds I'm talking about.
I'm very happy that colleagues from across the world, and this was a very interesting discussion that Professor Janaagraha and Kansi just now, and Ramesh and some of us started last year. That is, how can we build a platform where we can ask the difficult questions? Because if you can't ask the right question, there's no way that you're going to be able to start finding the right set of answers. So we've tried to build this platform, which includes, top-ranking research university in the world, ourselves as as a potential national innovation university and a practice organization, try and bring people together to have a clear debate of what the core questions are. Where is the innovation happening? Where is the answer situated? And trying to build that together into a system that will start generating answers. Because they're in the landscape. But how can we put it together? And finally, how can we enable it to scale? One of the biggest challenges India has today is to take answers and solutions that work in one particular place, be able to extract the principles, in a sense, build theory around that across many disciplines and translate it in other locations. But to do that for the mass and not for the elite. And we actually haven't found ways of doing that, excepting in very, very particular locations. So thank you all so much for staying out here so late.